Dig into some international news now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to retaliate after Iran launched its largest missile attack on his country last night, stoking fears of a wider regional war as Israeli forces continue their operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Israel's military says it was able to intercept many of Iran's missiles, and U.S. forces in the region also took some of them out. Our Chris Livesay has more from Tel Aviv.
But some of those missiles did get through, like the one that smashed this car in a residential area outside of Tel Aviv. Among the roughly 180 ballistic missiles Israel says Iran fired at Israel overnight, lighting up the night sky with incandescent debris, as many of those missiles were intercepted by Israel's defenses. We saw missiles flying over places like the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and of course here in Tel Aviv, Israel's biggest city. Iran was jubilant. There were images of people there celebrating this attack from Iran on Israel. And there were some people who were injured here. In fact, one person at least we know was killed in these attacks. All of this comes amid a widening war in Israel at its northern border with Lebanon as it goes after Hezbollah, which has been wreaking havoc across northern Israeli towns for the past 11 months, displacing roughly 70,000 people. The Israeli military announced earlier this week it was launching a limited offensive across the border with Lebanon and showed pictures of them destroying tunnels and destroying weapons they say they found inside of these tunnels. It's a level of intensity and fighting we haven't seen in this part of Lebanon since the last time Israel fought a full-blown ground invasion against Hezbollah in 2006. Chris Livesay, CBS News, outside Tel Aviv.
All right, on that subject, let's take you live right now to the United Nations, where the Secretary General is addressing the Iranian attack on Israel. Let's dip in and listen.
General, the suffering endured by the Palestinian people in Gaza is beyond imagination. At the same time, the situation in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, continues to deteriorate with Israeli military operations, construction of settlements, evictions, land grabs, and intensification of settler attacks, progressively undermining any possibility of a two-state solution. And simultaneously, armed Palestinian groups have also used violence. Hamas has continued to launch rockets, and just yesterday, 7 Israelis were killed in a terror attack in Jaffa. Madam President, the events of the past week, the past months, and indeed nearly the past year make it clear. It's high time for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, with the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, the effective delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza, and irreversible progress to a two-state solution. It's high time for a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, re-election towards full implementation of Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701, paving the way for diplomatic efforts for sustainable peace. It's high time to stop the sickening cycle of escalation after escalation that is leading the people of the Middle East straight over the cliff. Each escalation has served as a pretext for the next. We must never lose sight of the tremendous toll this is.
All right, you've been listening to the United Nations Secretary General addressing the ongoing tension, the ongoing wars that are happening in the Middle East. We're going to continue to listen in on the Secretary General and bring you updates throughout the day. For more on the U.S. response to the situation in the Middle East, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. All right, Willie James, what are you hearing from the White House about possible Israeli response to this Iranian missile attack, and more importantly, diplomatic efforts?
Hey there, Vlad. Good to be with you. Well, President Biden addressed the situation following that attack yesterday. We did hear from him where he said that the U.S. remains fully supportive of Israel. This comes after nearly 200 missiles, as we saw on our screens, as you just mentioned in that live report with Chris Livesay. Those nearly 200 missiles on their way towards Israel, some of them making it through. Now, the United States does have assets in the region, and some of those assets were involved in shooting some of these projectiles down. But President Biden was asked about what comes next and how the U.S. will respond during a meeting where he convened his cabinet to talk about the storm damage with Helene. Listen to what he said.
It's an active discussion right now. We've got to get all the data straight. We've been in constant contact with the Israeli government and our counterparts, and that remains to be seen.
Now, U.S. officials have been in touch with their Israeli counterparts to talk about next steps. I'll also note that the Prime Minister sent a message to Iran saying essentially that Israel will respond and that Iran is essentially making a mistake here with that attack.
All right, Willie James Inman for us at the White House. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.